Welcome, everyone, to the Council on Recovery's Conversations on Addiction, Recovery, and Family, from our living room to yours. As this pandemic continues to shift and change the way we live and work, the Council invites you into weekly conversations about how we can respond. What is self-care? During this period where our lives and schedules look different, how do we prioritize ourselves? How can taking care of yourself benefit those you care for? You are not alone. The Council is here to support you. Leading our conversation this week is Joanna Robertson, LMFT, LPC, Choices Counselor at the Council on Recovery, certified through the Center on Mind-Body Medicine. Please note that we hope to be able to field questions using the chat feature and welcome your thoughts, comments, and feedback. This is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Council on Recovery website. Now, if you will, please join Joanna in her living room.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining today. And like Kamari had said, feel free to send any questions or thoughts to the chat. There'll also be time during the presentation that you can unmute yourself and you can share what you're thinking. So I wanted to start off with just talking about what is self-care, because this is something that I know a lot of us have probably heard a lot about. Like, we've heard of self-care, it gets tossed around a lot, but what does it really mean? And so one of my favorite quotes about it says, "True self-care is not salt baths and chocolate cake. It is making the choice to build a life you don't need to regularly escape from." So I think this is really important to note, because sometimes we think of self-care as like treats or extra things that we do for ourselves. And sometimes it can be that, but it's also building in practices, building a life that is sustainable, that sustains you, that lets you continue to do the work that you want to be doing and prevents burnout. And it's not something that your life isn't something you're always just trying to get to the weekend or just get to a vacation, but that you're building in sustainability. And that's really what self-care can be. Another quote that I find really valuable is, "I have come to believe that caring for myself is not self-indulgent. Caring for myself is an act of survival." So again, self-care is a way of claiming worthiness for yourself. So it's kind of claiming, like, I have a right to thrive in my life. I have a right to prioritize myself. And these things are what will help me make the difference in the world that I want to make, and it'll help me live in a way that I want. So that being said, we'll chat for a second about what self-care is not. So this one you've probably heard before, but self-care is not selfish or self-indulgent. I think a lot of times we grow up with an idea that, like, focusing on ourselves or putting ourselves first is selfish, or there's something wrong with that. When in reality, if we consistently don't prioritize ourselves, we end up feeling burnt out, and it makes it really difficult for us to show up for others in the ways that we need to. Also, self-care is not just for women. So and maybe it's because I'm a woman, so most of the quotes or the ads and things I see about self-care show women, but I think it's important to just talk about how these are practices and things that are for everybody. And they're not just people who have money. It doesn't have anything to do with, like, one race or another. It's for everybody. And that's important to know. Another thing is that not all of self-care is fun or enjoyable. So that might seem counterintuitive, but sometimes the practices that we need and that are going to be sustainable and healthy for us aren't always the most exciting in the moment. So sometimes it means, like, going to bed earlier than you want to, or setting a boundary with somebody that's causing you stress. It could be getting up and doing a workout. So these things that we have to really encourage ourselves to do, but are practices that give us energy, give us life and sustainability. At the same time, we have to be careful to not make self-care just a to-do list item. And this is tricky because whenever we're trying to learn something new, it does require practice, but we can easily, and I've been guilty of this, to fall into the trap of almost making a list of everything I need to do and then adding self-care to it. And it's okay, I better do some self-care stuff so I can cross it off my list. So, yeah, it's just being mindful that these are things you want to build into your life, and not just try to quickly get to so that you can cross off. And a reminder with that is that with self-care, it's okay to not be perfect. There's not a perfect or always correct way to do self-care. This is a lifelong process of learning about yourself, learning what you need to thrive, and being willing to take or make the choice to build that into your life. And it's going to change depending on what season you're in. So in a few minutes, we'll talk about that, because I think for a lot of us, the self-care that worked pre-COVID may not be what makes sense and what's helpful right now. So maybe your self-care looked like having social time or being outside, or lots of different things that have shifted recently. So it's important to give yourself some grace and some flexibility in what this looks like on a day-to-day basis. So before I go on, I'm just wondering if anyone has any thoughts about this, about what self-care is or is not, that they would like to share. And if you do, you can unmute yourself and just jump in. Okay, there'll be chances later on as well to share any thoughts. Okay, so self-care is multifaceted, meaning that it can include any or all of these things on the slide. So it can involve practices that impact your physical well-being, your awareness, your kindness, pleasure, support from others, being curious. It also has to do with where you place your attention, where you stake your priorities. So all these different things. And at least from my experience, there's usually a particular area that I know I need to focus on. So it might be that for a while I feel really good about the practices I'm using for my social self-care. So my friendships, my relationships feel strong and healthy, but maybe I'm noticing that my time isn't really balanced, or I'm not taking steps to remember to drink my water, go outside, get sunshine. And so I might put my energy towards that component of self-care. And for me, at least, those things shift in terms of what feels like the stronger practices and where are the ones that I need to focus more on. So I think this is a piece. Okay. I think I fixed, is my sound working again? Hopefully. Sorry about that. One of the joys of technology. Yes, okay. So this is a perfect slide for what just happened. So one of the really important things about self-care is to practice self-compassion. So self-compassion is a concept that Dr. Kristen Neff really popularized and studied, and it came out of the study of mindfulness. And there are three main components to it that I wanted to share with you. So the first is self-kindness versus self-judgment. A lot of times we are quick to judge ourselves. So for example, just now when my audio cut out, I could go into self-judgment of, oh, you should have been more mindful of your controls. How could you let that happen? You know, this is going to reflect badly on you, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know, I wonder if most of you have had an experience of self-judgment that starts with something small and can quickly snowball into feeling really bad about yourself and being really critical, and not critical in a way that pushes you towards positive growth. So the alternative of that is self-kindness. So self-kindness is recognizing like we're going to mess up and it's okay. And to have some patience and gentleness with ourselves. And what I really value about this idea is that self-kindness doesn't say that you have to stay right where you are. There's no room for growth. There's no room for change. It really just says that your worthiness, your value as a person isn't tied to your performance or isn't tied to mistakes. So you can make a mistake, you can try something and it can fail, and your worthiness doesn't change. And so that's something I've been personally working on for a while now, so that my value as a person, my worthiness as a person isn't tied to my performance or to my ability to make as few mistakes as possible. And when you're able to cultivate that self-kindness, it actually can make you more empowered to try new things. Because whether or not it works out, like, you are still a wonderful, worthy, lovable person. The second piece about self-compassion has to do with common humanity versus isolation. So common humanity looks at this idea that suffering and struggle are part of the human experience. And it's really easy when things are difficult or when we're struggling to feel like we're alone, or to feel like we're the only one going through something difficult like this. So common humanity recognizes that it's not true. We're never truly alone, and we're never really the only person that has experienced this. And so it's this idea of, when we experience difficulty or suffering, being able to say to ourselves, like, this is really tough. Like, this is a tough moment. And tough moments are part of being human. There's nothing wrong with me that I'm experiencing this tough moment. I'm not less than, weaker than anyone else. I'm just a human, and that's tough. And I think this is really important right now, because a lot of us are experiencing an increased sense of isolation. And so it's helpful to remember that we're in this together, and that even though there is loneliness or isolation, it's happening across the world. And so it is kind of a shared human experience at this moment. And the last piece of self-compassion is mindfulness versus over-identification. So mindfulness is the moment-to-moment awareness, where you practice being aware of your thoughts, your feelings, even your physical sensations, your surroundings, moment to moment, with curiosity and kindness. So trying to stay out of that self-judgment and focusing on just what's happening. And that differs from what we often do, which is overly identifying with our experiences, with our thoughts, because it's really easy to feel like we are our thoughts. So because I have a thought, that is who I am, as opposed to just being curious, like, oh, I'm having this thought, and not attaching to it. So when you combine these, the self-kindness, the common humanity, and the practice of mindfulness, you're able to cultivate greater levels of self-compassion. And when we have greater levels of self-compassion, not only is it easier for us to have empathy for others and to connect with the suffering and pain of common humanity, but we can be gentle with that within ourselves. And like I said, it's also easier to get through difficulties and mess ups, mistakes, because we have this foundation of kindness and acceptance and support that we have created for ourselves, that gives us that support and a thing to fall back on that says, like, okay, yeah, you messed up, but you are still a worthy person. Messing up is part of being human, and we're going to take the next step. So it's a really beautiful practice that has been very valuable in my life. So we're actually going to do a self-compassion practice now that I'm going to lead you through. So before I get started, I want to leave space for any questions, and then I'll give it a little setup. Okay. So just as a note, anytime you're doing any type of mindfulness practice, meditation practice, it's really important to be aware of what's happening for you. So if you are experiencing like a lot of discomfort during this practice, feel free to open your eyes, to just focus on your breath, and to step out of it for a while. Because sometimes if you have spent a lot of your life being critical and harsh towards yourself, the practice of suddenly being kind and gentle can be a little bit overwhelming. And so just take your time with the practice and, take as much of it as you need to. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to invite you to get comfortable. So adjust if you need to. Whenever I say get comfy, everybody always shifts around. We hold ourselves in uncomfortable positions all the time. So get comfortable. If you can, have your feet firmly on the ground. Rest your hands in your lap. If you feel comfortable, I'll invite you to close your eyes. If not, just have a gentle gaze down. And this will help you to focus your attention inward. So we'll start by taking a few slow, deep breaths. Giving ourselves permission to put on hold anything else that we feel like we should be doing right now at this time. For the next few minutes, there's nothing else that you should be doing, nothing to get done. Put the to-do list aside, even the one in your head. Just tune into your breath. relaxing your belly, which lets you take more full, deep breaths. Relaxing the shoulders, relaxing the jaw. Notice tension elsewhere in the body, maybe sending a breath there, and seeing if you can let go a little bit more. And as you continue to breathe slowly and deeply, relaxing the body, I invite you to think about something that you would like more of for yourself in your life. It might be kindness, compassion, trust. Joy. And on your next inhale, I want you to breathe that in for yourself. Perhaps using the word itself as a way to focus your intention. So saying to yourself, breathing in, I breathe in joy. And spend a few moments enjoying just breathing in this kind, sweet wish for yourself. And if the mind wanders, just gently notice where it's gone and bring it back to focus on your breath. And breathing in the well wish for yourself. So breathing in, I breathe in compassion. Now I invite you to think about someone or a group of people that you would like to send well wishes to. Maybe you feel like they need the same thing that you do, whether it's joy, compassion, kindness, or maybe it's something else, health, forgiveness, patience. And on the next cycle of breath, take the inhale for you, breathe in what you need, and on the exhale, send the well wish to the person that you've thought of. So breathing compassion for myself, and I breathe out self-compassion to you. And continue this cycle of taking in and sending out for a few moments. Inhale for me. And exhale for you. And again, if the mind wanders, it's just what the mind does. Just notice where it's gone and then gently bring it back to rest on the breath. And continue this cycle of taking in on the inhale and sending out on the exhale for 3 more cycles of breath. And then you can start to bring your awareness back to yourself, sitting, noticing your feet on the ground, noticing your body in contact with whatever you're sitting on. Maybe wiggle your fingers and toes or take a good stretch. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. All right. Well, welcome back and thank you for doing that practice with me. I would love for people just to share like 1 or 2 words about what that was like. Either pop them into the comments or unmute yourself and just say a word or 2 about what your experience was. So someone said, BB says calming. Yes. Calm. Christina. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, mentally rejuvenating. Thank you, Nikolai. Yeah, I find anytime I just focus on my breathing, let my belly be relaxed, it has a calming effect, which has to do with our biology and the way that the breath works, but also just taking in and like giving myself those kind words of attention also for me has the effect of almost being like a hug. And sometimes if I'm especially feeling anxious or harsh towards myself, I'll even put like a hand on my heart or hands and just have that warmth and pressure as a comforting practice. Yeah. So inhaling joy in the task. Oh, okay. I like that. So even maybe in like times or tasks that you don't like, you don't know if you want to do, but inhaling joy and finding the joy in it and taking that in. That's beautiful. Okay. So I'm going to keep going, but if you do have more thoughts about it, feel free to keep sharing them in the comments because we have plenty of time to get to them. Okay. So I've already started to talk about this, but our self-care practices feel particularly important in this moment of COVID-19, of isolation, of staying home. And it's just really difficult. And I think sometimes we might like underestimate the stress or the challenge that this puts on us, even if we are in the moment we are safe. The sense of unknown, the sense of uncertainty or threat has a toll on our minds and bodies. So I wanted to talk about a couple things with this. So first, I really love this graphic, which talks about like what I can control versus what is outside of my control. And I think one of the great things about good self-care is setting good boundaries. And part of that is knowing like what is yours to worry and mess with and what is not. And so like this says, like other people's decisions, how long this lasts, what other people are doing, like all of that is out of our control. And I know it's easy for me to like hop out of the circle of control and like worry about what other people are doing or worry of what's going to happen. But really, like all I can do are the things within that circle, which is deal with my attitude, my choices, my practices, and my own compassion. And so I hope that you find that helpful as well. And in addition, right, so this is a time when a lot of people are experiencing higher levels of stress and anxiety. We're stuck in a place of limbo, and that can feel really unsteady. So feeling like you don't know what's coming, you don't know how to plan, you don't know how to set yourself up. And like I'm a person that really loves to have plans, and so this has been a real stretch for me to let go and to trust, just to trust and to take things moment by moment, which again is that practice of mindfulness. So like I said, like we all have new stresses, whether that's being alone more, or it could be that you're suddenly at home with everybody in your family and you have no space. It could be financial or health stress. But just as we have a lot of new stress, we also have new opportunities. So opportunities to become more aware of ourselves, opportunities to be there for other people, and just to discover new ways of being creative and compassionate and of reaching out. And one of the reasons I really love that practice of breathing in for yourself and breathing out for others is that they become dependent on each other. And so you have to have that foundation of the inhale. You have to take in before you can give out. And if you just tried to like only give, you would run out of air. And at the same time, like you can't always just take in. But there may be times when you need more inhale for you, and you have to be protective of that before you're ready to send it back out. So I don't know if anyone wants to share like what your experience has been in terms of how COVID-19 has impacted your stress, your anxiety, your self-care practices, anything like that. And again, unmute or put it in the chat. I can say for myself that there's been several times where like I haven't really recognized like mentally that I'm stressed. So like I'm not having a consistent word thought, but I'll notice it show up in the body. So feeling more restless, having difficulty sleeping, things like that. And so that's something I would invite you to pay attention to is how your body is doing during all of this. Because often our bodies will give us clues and signals about just like how we are overall. And that's really important to pay attention to. And it's an opportunity to invite a new self-care practice in, so that you can tend to what's happening in the body, which is always connected to what's happening in the mind and in the heart. So I wanted to share some ideas about simple ways you can incorporate self-care. And the reason I wanted to call this presentation Real Life Self-Care is that, like I said at the beginning, sometimes what we were doing was working great, but now it no longer is working or makes sense. And so we've got to recalibrate what's going on. So I'm sure you have lots of ideas, and I always love hearing what people are doing. But some that I thought I would share would, one, is drink plenty of water. I currently have my water bottle and a sparkling water with me, so I'm trying to keep that one done. Meditating, practicing mindfulness, those intentional practices where you really dedicate space just to sit with yourself, with the breath. It can also be a really great time to incorporate spiritual practices, things like that, into that time. Moving your body is really important, and it's not about worrying about your weight or trying to look a certain way. It's just that movement is really good for mitigating stress. And so this could be at-home yoga or taking a walk if you feel comfortable. And yeah, just getting some movement, having a dance party in your living room, whatever you want to do. Reaching out to other people and just checking in with them, but also being willing to ask for help when you need it. So saying hey, today is not an awesome day. Can we talk for a few minutes? I need to see your face, whatever it is. Creating playlists can be helpful. So finding music, finding podcasts that lift your spirit can be really nice to give you some energy and maybe to kind of shake you out of a negative mind frame. Getting sunlight is really helpful. So you could take a walk, ride your bike. You could even just open your window, sit outside for a few minutes. Just letting yourself move out of the same space that you're in a lot. Other practices can be journaling, making sure you're getting enough sleep. So I work with teenagers at the council. So, and one thing I'm noticing with them is that their sleep is all out of whack with school not being they're not going to school and just doing it at home. And it's impacting their mental health. So they're staying up all night and they're sleeping most of the day, and it's just throwing them off. And so just be mindful of your sleep. Are you sleeping a lot more than usual, a lot less than usual? And making sure you find that good amount of sleep for you. Again, asking for help. So, even if you were usually the helper, you were usually the one that people go to, you are still going to have times when you need support, and it's okay to ask for it. It's okay to say I'm overwhelmed, I need support, I don't know how to handle this, and to let other people step in and be there for you. And along with that, sometimes one of the ways we get help for ourselves is that we set a boundary. So this could be with if a lot of people are asking for help and you need some time away from that. It could be setting a boundary with that. It could be a boundary with the news. So setting time frames when you are not going to check the news, you're not going to be on your phone, and letting yourself disconnect. play is really helpful and a really great way to practice self-care. So this can be playing games, playing with your kids, drawing, painting, whatever it is, but allowing some joy, some silliness into your life. And it's really hard to think about that when there's a lot of seriousness and tough stuff happening, to realize like I still can play, I can still have fun, and joy is still a valuable part of my life. It's important to breathe. So just every once in a while, check in with yourself and like, well, yeah, there's the breath. Just take a moment. And then also just be flexible with your structure. So I don't know, I feel like for me, a lot of things in terms of my time have shifted. So like when I do my work, all of these things. And so being flexible with the need to kind of go with the flow a little bit more, and recognizing that, okay, like this schedule, this structure is going to work for me for a little while, but as things change, I can readjust, and that's okay. And being patient with yourself in the process. So these are just some ideas, and I know that there's more. And I'm sure you have some ideas. So if anyone has an idea they'd like to share, you can put it in the comments as I continue, and I'll make sure to pause and to read those out. Okay, so one of the things that I'm involved with that has been incredible for my well-being, my self-care, and has really changed the way that I work with people has been involvement with the Center for Mind-Body Medicine and with Mind-Body Skills. So Mind-Body Skills are practices that build awareness and then self-care or self-healing. So these are tools that teach us how to basically to take care of ourselves and promote healing. And so we're actually getting ready to start an 8-week Mind-Body Skills group at the council, which I'm really excited about. So I am going to be facilitating this along with David Sunday. And so yeah, it's an 8-week group. The group meets for 2 hours every week. And these skills and this community really help to boost your physical, your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. It really can show improvement in all these aspects of well-being. This is a peer group, and so nobody in group is trying to fix anybody else, but the support that you get is incredible. And I have found this just to be really profound in terms of the relationships I've been able to form, which for me is a really big part of my self-care, is having really close friendships where people I can truly like share what's going on and get beyond just like the surface of like, oh yeah, I'm doing fine, but like really get into like, what's going on. And bonus, this is a virtual group, so wherever you are, you're able to join. So this is the flyer, and there's the link for if you would like to sign up. I'm also happy to answer questions about this. But I wanted to talk about this because I think it's just like an opportunity to dedicate time for yourself and to get some support in building tools for self-care. And at the end of the presentation, when I wrap up, Kamari will share some other ways that you can get involved with the council, other tools for support that are there. And there's a lot right now. There's virtual healing circles, there's mindfulness practices that you can tune into. So, there's a lot of ways that you can like reach out and get support as you're building these practices of self-care. So it doesn't have to be something that you figure out completely in isolation. Okay. So as we're wrapping up, Nikolai had said in terms of a self-care practice that he's been revisiting favorite books, and it gives him away from his phone and screen. Yes, I've been doing a lot of reading too, and it's been good. I find there's times when I don't have energy to work on a project, but I don't want to watch TV, and then I'll just sit and read a whole book in a sitting. It's kind of fun. So these are some things to think about, even if you don't want to share, and just think about what areas of your life need care. So kind of twisting the question from, okay, what do I need to improve? What do I need to fix? But what part of my life do I need to be compassionate towards, needs some gentle attention? And then once you've identified that area, how can I incorporate self-care into this? So what's one practice that I can try and start with? So don't start trying to incorporate 5 new practices. Just start with one. So maybe it's okay, I've been checking the news too much, so I'm going to check the news in the morning, and I'm going to check it, a few hours before bed, but after that, I'm not going to check. And if I need to put a block on my phone or put some kind of boundary, get accountability, I'm going to do that as a first step. So yeah, thinking about what's an area, how can I incorporate self-care into this area? It may require setting a boundary, and if so, what would that be? And then do I need to reach out? So is this something I feel pretty confident that I can do on my own? Or would I benefit from reaching out to somebody and getting support? So just some things to think about. Okay. I just wanted to leave a few more minutes. If anybody has any last questions or comments about any of the things that I've talked about today. And I really appreciate all of you being here. And I appreciate everyone who might be listening to this later on. Even taking the time to listen, to do the practice, to consider the areas of self-care is a form of self-care and is a form of giving yourself that priority and that compassion. Okay, so I guess if there's no other questions, I will turn it back over to you.
Joanna, thank you so much. I think everybody may be so rested that they can't think of anything else that they want to share. I hope that's what happened. So thank you everyone for your participation or listening ear for the Council on Recovery's conversations on addiction, recovery, and family, from our living room to yours. Moving forward, these will take place on the first and third Tuesdays of each month. So please join us for our next live conversation, which will be Tuesday, June 2nd, when Patrick Hagler helps us to navigate the gray of COVID-19. As you learned today, you can participate in an 8-week virtual mind-body group hosted by Joanna Robertson and David Sunday. Please register for that on our website. Also, please note that our living room conversations are recorded and available on our website, along with a number of other virtual tools for a variety of audiences. The Council on Recovery continues to provide treatment services via telehealth, including assessments, individual, group, and family therapy, as well as intensive outpatient treatment. In the course of this conversation, you may have recognized that you or someone you know needs help. Start here at the Council by calling 713-914-0556. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please consider making a donation to the Council on Recovery. Your support helps us to continue our service to the community during the coronavirus outbreak in the form of CEU events, remote clinical services, remote community education, and more. Thank you all so much for participating today. And thank you again, Joanna.
Yes, thank you all so much.